It's a celebration of International Women's Day. What an honour to be speaking with you on this long weekend where we celebrate the Irish Protector Saints and so much more. Today is a diverse talk, but it's really my personal journey and contribution. No one ever achieves anything alone. And particularly on this day of International Women's Day, I would like you to consider, what does being international mean? I'd like to focus on this question of being international. In education, we talk about knowing, doing, and the upper echelon of being. Doesn't necessarily mean having to travel to another country. Doesn't mean being able to understand intercultural awareness and grow with it when others come to your nation state. Does it mean being enculturated in diversity, and in what way? Does it mean knowing a second or third or fourth language? Does it mean being able to comment on artwork? And what does this have to do with engineering? This is an old photograph of my beloved mother, Vicky, at 17, with her father, Theodoros, boarding a boat which took 31 days to arrive to Australia, alone, without her sisters, not knowing English, but traveling with so many others who had hopes and dreams of what they would fulfill in Australia, not knowing what they were to expect, but one travel bag in their hand. The cross that my mother is wearing on this occasion is a cross that her father gave her on the day she boarded the boat. At 13, my beautiful mother gave me that cross, and it has been around my neck ever since. I want you to think about the music you just heard, from where it came from deep within. My biological mother is Vicky, my biological father is George, and they met in Australia and married within a month of meeting one another. They raised us with beautiful values and ethics. We were thrust into a multicultural society in Australia, the diaspora, that is, the Greeks, the Macedonians, the Germans, the Italians, the Lebanese, the Vietnamese, the Chinese, the Malays. The school I attended was titled Tempe Primary Disadvantaged School because most of the kids couldn't speak English. Their first language was their mother tongue, descended from their parents who migrated to Australia. To this day, My father cannot speak English because the factories he worked within were with others from Macedonia, Italy, and Germany. He learned so much of their language, but not so much of English. But his hope for us was to be educated and not to have to work with our hands. A very common story for those migrating between the 60s, 70s, 80s. But later, Tempe Primary Disadvantaged School became a selective school. The high school across the road is called Tempe Language School because 150 languages are represented in the school. Diversity is not a disadvantage. The cultural experiences were enriching. Greek school, afternoon school. We used to think, why is everyone going home after school when we have to stay back? But of course, there was Macedonian schools on Saturdays and Arabic schools on other days. And we studied and worked hard because there was great hope in our future. My parents could not go past second class and sixth class because of the war in Greece. So education was paramount to them, though they never pressured us. Just be a good person was their hope. And on the right, Greek dancing and visits to church and excursions with the Greek community, towns and villages from Greece who lived in Australia and were under the same plight. We had many uncles and aunties, many mothers and fathers, many cousins. And on graduating from high school, I was able to complete a degree which got me a great job. I had never traveled abroad until that time. And I landed a position at Nortor Networks, which had me traveling every other month to amazing places like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, the US, Canada, New Zealand, and the list goes on, projects galore. And what we were doing, providing broadband capabilities across the world and even wireline services. But amazingly, one of our Indian markets post deregulation went from counting the number of telephones per village to the number of telephones per person. An incredible period between the 90s and 2010. And there I became exposed, not just by hearing my friends at primary school and high school talk about the other cultures and seeing their foods and hearing their language. I got to live this now firsthand. And one of the first things that struck me was Chinese opera at an evening tea house. And here I'm barely 21 and couldn't believe I went from not being able to afford travel to constantly traveling. But these are the kinds of sounds I heard. This rendition from Chinese scholar in Canada, Shaling Wang. 'And then, just as I thought I'd never be a teacher, when asked when I was 17 or 18 that I looked like a teacher, I said, no, I'd never be a teacher. And my PhD supervisor on one of these return trips from China with work said to me, Katina, there's an opportunity for you to apply. I said, Carol, I've never thought about applying to become a teacher or a lecturer. Oh, you should throw your hat in the ring. So I call myself the unlikely academic. And all of a sudden, these experiences for the last 6 years at Nortel Networks that I garnered from traveling and understanding markets and cultures and engineering and how people absorb technologies, all of a sudden this became useful in the classroom. International students from all over the places I had traveled to descended at the University of Wollongong, where I gained the position of lecturer. And here I was able to relate in a deeper way. I even had begun to try and learn some basic Mandarin. But my students, oh, my students, and their plight in migrating to Australia and wanting a better future for themselves through education and sharing their fears, sharing their hopes, and sharing their struggle. On returning to work after different stages of maternity leave, after my third child, I went back on a slow return to work, wanting to garner the youngest two who were closer together. And my executive dean, Professor Chris Cook, Faculty of Engineering and Information Sciences, tapped me on the shoulder and said, why don't you consider this a deanship in an international capacity where you'd be traveling every 2 weeks to nation states such as the UAE, Singapore, Malaysia, China, and anywhere else we had twinning programs and partner programs. So all of a sudden, thrust into this other world, but back to where I was when I was working as an engineer, but this time at an educational capacity, and again being exposed to even greater markets that I hadn't visited, looking at how do people learn in different markets, how do we localize content, why is that important, and what is the role of the female in particular in terms of diversity. You can see here many young women in the audience. Most of these are students, telecommunications engineers, but again, many young people whom inspired me. And I'm sure I also inspired by being present, but this was the two-way communication and interaction. And in India, occasions and opportunities to venture there into international women in law enforcement conferences, where surrounded by a pool of women for leadership, collaboration, and security, and feeling that solidarity, these amazing women who particularly had an emphasis on gendered violence within the ranks and within India itself, creating campaigns to minimize violence at home, continually being inspired, and the question of the role of technology being asked by many of the males that were also present at this conference. But what does it mean to be an international woman? So living diversity in so many ways. This is a wonderful role model on my right, Professor Ramalatha Miramuthu, and also she's part of the IEEE Women in Engineering. She's now retired as a professor in India, has a startup where she's focusing all her efforts on returning mothers. She's holding a conference on returning mothers. She had said to me herself in India, not long after this photo, that you see all these women who are here to participate in the IEEE conference. Yes, Ramalatha, I see them. Well, my goal is to have them continue even after they have children. She said, I went through having children and I continued to work, but the style here in India is that once women have children, they stop working in their workplaces. I want to change that, she said. And just this last year, she held the Returning Mothers Conference, which was highly successful and an amazing initiative, as well as supported by so many other IEEE Women in Engineering, including Professor Bozena Pasik Duncan, a mathematician from Kansas University. And this photograph that I have to say is one of my favorite in my personal archives. The expressions on the faces of these young men and the respect they showed to their teacher, each other. I just wanted to be in their presence. I just wanted to feel their ambience. There was a deep trust and an honor between us. But these are our young scholars. These are our future thinkers, where they are going to consider how technology will play a role in society. And I emphasize here the theme of this year's International Women's Day being accelerate action. It doesn't mean to be more productive. It doesn't mean to churn out more papers. It doesn't mean to work without sleep. It means that we are there to support one another, that it is worth going to this university and that university, even though they're unnamed in the global ranking list. It's to care, it's to want to go, it's to want to hear and be and interact with anyone because they are human and no other reason. They made me feel special. And I hope in turn I made them feel special. But accelerating action means to go in there to bat for other people, for our students, for our stakeholders, for each other, for our colleagues, our collaborators, non-government organizations, not-for-profits, the media, our children, our partners, our pets, the garden outside, the ocean not far from us. It's to go into bat for that which is around us, our environment. And here, as I do in all places I visit, I try to live diversity. When I was in Ireland, I went to your museum January of last year and saw the relics of the saints you're celebrating over the weekend. I saw these beautiful stained glasses at the museums. But I do this in all cultures because I want to see what unites us. What is that call? So we need to preserve tradition. But this clash between technology and tradition, the old and the new, how do we herald in the new while we maintain the values and the traditions that our ancestors have delivered to us? Here on the right is a 28-foot Buddha Maitreya in the Yonggi Lamazari that I visited when I was 21 or 22 years of age. An amazing 28-foot Buddha. One of the fingers is the size of a human adult thigh. You can imagine, and this is a bright photo, but all the photos that I took were dark because I could hardly look up. Made out of one piece of wood. Now, when it was made, the question is how it was transported, using what technology to the Beijing Yonggi Lamazari that is now Tibetan. We don't know the answer to that. We don't know how this huge tree trunk was actually transported over.
现在有好多寺庙啊，都被年轻人给挤满了。大伙儿在上班和上进之间选择了上香，上香似乎也成了现在年轻人的一种流行时尚。老渔翁琢磨着，与其说是年轻人热衷于寺庙游，倒不如说是旅游业爆火的一种现象。况且呢，也意味着传统文化在新一代的年轻人中又火了起来。佛木雕像、伍佰罗汉山、赵佛楼里边的金丝楠佛龛，被称为雍和宫的木雕三绝。万佛阁各层供奉的小佛像得有万尊之多，又有七世达赖喇嘛敬献乾隆帝的整根白檀木雕的弥勒大佛。
The top here, St. Mary's Cathedral in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. On the left here, a Hindu temple in Kerala, in India. And here in the middle, a Coptic Orthodox church where amazing Arabic music was emanating from. But as I heard this music and I walked towards the other area, I also heard an Islamic call for prayers. I want us to think about living side by side with one another. And here I press the call. I'm sorry I ended short, but I want you to feel what I feel. But there is more about this call that I find in the deepest of music and the deepest of chants in any religion, in any culture. Who are we calling to? What are we asking for? Who or what are we praising? And where we are directing our attention should be also where we are directing perhaps some of our expertise. Instead, areas which are a mismatch to our modern society. Where are we going from here? What are we going to do? How are we going to use technology in its best way? Truly, we cannot use technology to get to the other side. Whatever we believe in, whatever creed or doctrine or dogma or belief system we have or philosophical system we have, technology won't get us there. Technology won't make our hearts pure. So in that backdrop of humanity-centered design, what is this? What is this humanity-centered design? I hope you could hear it in the voices of the musicians. That to me is being humanity-centered. I can't say it in words. I had to go to music. We may also go to dance and poetry, to the arts. Where are the arts and the social sciences embedded in the engineering process? To my absolute delight, here we have more soldier crabs. Now, the whole idea of this viewing has to do with the process of co-design. If I'm quiet, you can hear them scuttle. The incredible thing is, I want you to think, oh, here's a slow one. Come on, baby. Now, the idea of this is society, right? This is like a metaphor for society. How do you find out what every single person wants to happen with regards to technology? And so there has to be some collective understanding. But even though these soldier crabs look absolutely homogeneous, they look the same, that one, they probably all think different things. This one has just gone and hidden itself. This one keeps going, and this one's in the process of hiding itself. This one's confused. Okay, I'm going to go under as well. But you can see all of these soldier crabs actually are doing something. They're going somewhere. They're thinking something, and they seem to be coming off the beach. Here we are at Sever Beach in Ben Boyd National Park. But how do you actually find out what everyone wants? I mean, this is the whole thing with users. Think about this as a metaphor for users. Some are going that way, some are going this way, some are going that way. They're charging through. But what are they doing? And how do we actually gather sentiment? How do we know what each one of these crabs actually wants? And what are you doing? And what methods are we going to use to actually collect the data? Absolutely phenomenal, this spectacle of soldier crabs. So humanity-centered design, as described by the great Don Norman, is something more than user-centered design or people-centered design or even human-centered design. It's about humanity, which encompasses not only people, humans and users and end users and others, but also flora and fauna and the environment around us. And he's saying, it's great to be preoccupied with the small things, but what about the bigger systems that will address societal challenges, global challenges, where change occurs at a local level in our communities? Jacques Ellul said that innovators and designers is everybody. It's not just those engineers. Here is my father again, in the middle of this little box, a pulley system going from left to right over a waterway that could rise in high levels. Dad built this at the age of 18. That's lived experience. Nobody taught him how to do it. He collaborated and made it happen with his friends. An amazing innovation when there was no cost, capability to build a bridge. This little pulley system, that's lived experience. But an amazing thing, what necessity is, this is why we are all designers. These are public interest technologies. This was what was required to build a bridge. The question I have today is what kind of bridges are we building? At an existential level, what if we considered conduits of discussion and deliberation and diplomacy between one another, the ability to say sorry and to ask for forgiveness, the ability to break bread together on a table, the ability to start again, the ability to see technology as more than shiny gadgetry and innovation things rather than processes where we would prosper. So from the lived experience to the lived expertise, nobody taught the villagers after World War II how to raise cattle or how to raise goats. A child who reached the age of 11 at school, because there were so many kids post World War II, they would be sent home if they were men, and they would be given an animal to raise. And professional expertise, when Dad moved to Australia, he had to learn to work with his hands in a different way, not with nature, but in manufacturing. And he worked at a glass factory, among others. And technology was so behind in the 70s when he started working at the glass factory. They had the ability to bring bottles down the conveyor belt, but no cooling system. So as Dad looked for broken bottles on the conveyor belt as it came down semi-automatically, really manually at that stage, he'd be picking up the glasses with his gloves, but they would be burning his fingers. So the leading hand brought ice buckets for the team, and they would put their hands in the ice buckets, take them out, then go and take the bottles off that were broken. Otherwise, they couldn't feel their fingers, and of course, broken glass into their fingers so often. Gloves, ice buckets. He sure was happy when the cooling machines came through, when the more automation came through, and then finally, after 25 years being made redundant to the machines. So our values, people have values, communities have values, diaspora have values. Have we asked what the values are of the community we are working with? Do we care? Are we moving fast and breaking things, or are we slowly considering the questions that are relevant and commensurately listening to our stakeholders? What's on your mind? What's not working? What would alleviate your pain today? What do you need? We can talk about global values, of course we can, but communities may have specific values, particularly Indigenous society, to do with trust and informed consent and ownership and property and sovereignty and identity. One size fits all will not be the future. Empowering communities to be able to build for themselves will be the future, together, exchanging ideas. Is love a value? Thornton Wilder said, love is an energy which exists of itself. It is its own value. Thus, could we talk about love by design, as has Kathy Treadaway in her compassionate design framework? Your values are the things that you believe are important in the way you live and work. They should determine your priorities, and deep down, they're probably the measures you use to tell if your life is turning out the way you want it to. But our values come from somewhere, from our belief systems. So technology and society, and as my mother did at 17, I did a bit later. Headhunted by Arizona State University, I left my Tempe house where I grew up, greeting my mum and dad for the last time for that duration, and leaving with my youngest two to go to Tempe, Arizona. How uncanny. Tempe, New South Wales, where I grew up, and Tempe, Arizona. I could hardly believe it when my boss told me where I would be going in Phoenix. And so a new place, a new people, a new political system, a new economic system. Why did it seem so difficult? I knew English. I was educated. I had 3 degrees. I had a guaranteed job. But it was so difficult. But amazing opportunities when we're talking about technology and society. Again, Ramalatha Miramithu here, second from your right. disruptive technologies, ethics, and global development. Yes, technology is disruptive. So I stepped off the plane the first time when I was visiting Arizona with the kids in May of 2017. And of course, a self-driving Uber vehicle had killed an Arizonan pedestrian who happened to be unhoused. Many years later, Rafaela Vasquez was found guilty of endangerment in the first deadly crash involving a fully autonomous car. And as I walked outside, the second time I arrived to Arizona with the children, I see a Waymo, this time with a training driver in the front. And last year, the Waymo in its current version is picking up hundreds of thousands of people now autonomously as they hail it via an app. It was during this time of the first Waymo and the current Waymo that we launched the IEEE Transactions on Technology and Society. And I was going to use my editorship to call for action on biometrics and the impact it was having on the Black community. On the right-hand side, I was also going to point to the benefits of technology through prosthesis and other exoskeleton devices helping people to walk. We are hoping for a balance, a harmony. And in the sustainability of AI, we start to look at different socio-technical systems. I don't think the current generative AI is sustainable into the longer term. We seem to be just wanting to regurgitate information, but for how long? Useful for the next 2 to 3 years, but then how will new information, completely new, enter the sphere? While it is currently being infiltrated by deep fakes, by bot-generated data, by open source intelligence that we have no mechanism to check its accuracy, though many people are trying to do this through machine learning as well. But sustainability of these systems needs to be recalibrated. I go back to the public interest. I go back to those things of necessity. And just for a moment, if you think I'm not progressive with tech, I am. And I'll show you why. My mother and father had plots of land that were not arable through their sheer hard work, using these implements, digging, smashing, cracking the dry earth. They love autonomy, but they are curious about how people will be employed and what new jobs will be generated by this new generation, but also how people will balance their lifestyles. So this thing, this socio-technical systems design is a hoe. Here's a Roman hoe, and people use this in ancient times. And we can see as far back these depictions in paintings 2,500 years ago of a plow, a human being, the social, and an animal, the social, plowing, that process of plowing in the trench and creating a trench being that which was technical, allowing someone to sow seed. They would use these contraptions like a whip or some kind of direction device. And then we got really clever with combustion and we got onto the devices, onto the plows. And so now we had a driver that was using something, no animal, but still in an environment. And this technical system, the social became the human, the process in the combustion and the engine and the wheels going round on this contraption through steam, plowing the earth and making it easier to plow. And this fully autonomous tractor that can work day or night, and you can program through a mobile app. The social being that technical director behind the desktop or behind the mobile, that mobile being the interface with the autonomous vehicle, here a tractor, and it plowing. And my mother sees these amazing videos during harvest time on different channels on TV and says to me, if only we had one of these. But while we are doing this, introducing autonomy, the question is, are there any shortcomings? And will they be overcome in the foreseeable future?
Every sunrise brings opportunity. Each field holds potential, waiting to be unlocked. Welcome to a new dawn in farming. John Deere autonomous tractors. Precision, power, possibility. Imagine a tractor that not only thinks, but also sees. A tractor that extends workdays without putting in more work hours. A tractor that lets farm owners and operators tackle other jobs, so you can solve new problems and improve results. Imagine having the freedom to plan, strategize, and optimize your operation like never before.
And this is where we move away from the old business models. Yes, it's great to make profits. Of course it is. We want sales maximization. We want to know the average revenue per user. Yes, we want to have cost savings, optimal solutions. But yes, there are also regulatory compliance checks now where we need to have certain things for safety and other rigor. But we are moving to the right, public interest technology. What does society need? What are the global challenges? What are the principled innovations? What are the use-inspired innovations? How do we ensure maximum valuable products and processes? And how do we harness these new business models with participation by our users, not one way, but together co-leading and co-designing with shared value? And so here we have new curriculum forming, which looks at the analysis and design of new systems and processes and emerging technologies, and people working together in groups, making space, asking communities, what are their needs? And how do we use co-design or other like approaches of participation for innovation? Here's one example of a company called Indigital, an Indigenous Australian company led by Michaela J. This just came on today, but Michaela is an acquaintance of mine. I'd like you to hear what she had to say.
It was important to me because I was working as a National Parks Ranger and I didn't like the way that First Nations stories were told using metal signs in national parks. And I saw a way to use holograms to replace metal signs. We are not a company that will come to a community and load a whole new lot of technologies on the community. To me, success is every time an elder gets in a virtual reality headset or creates their own hologram and builds a confidence that they didn't have in a technology, and also learns how to stand in their power in those projects. So one of my favourite things that I've ever seen was 4 generations of women in a remote community, a Barada community in Western Queensland, all working on making holograms together. So a 4-year-old and an 84-year-old, and the generations in between that all collaborating on hologram development together. First Nations knowledges, languages and law are disappearing rapidly in my country. Australia has the highest rate of language extinction in the world, and we're scared about our knowledge systems not being translated into future generations. And as a custodian, I'm scared of that too. I guess what my community always say is that you are the dreams of your ancestors and your descendants are your dreams, and our biggest responsibility as human beings on this planet for such a short time is to be a good ancestor.
So reclaiming storytelling in our communities is very important, the need to listen to each other. And a famous poem delivered by one of my favorite poets, Maya Angelou, is "And Still I Rise." And this is how we come to communities and reach out to one another, through these kinds of mechanisms. Here's her poem.
Does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise, up from a past rooted in pain I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling and bearing in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so, wow. There I go.
On that message, despite there are more slides, I'd like to give some time to the audience. I wanted to say thank you very much for listening so patiently, and I hope in sharing of my journey, you take away two main points: the need to reconnect with the land and the need to reconnect with each other. And one of the poems I wanted to read out finally here was "A Gift to Bring You" by Rumi. You have no idea how hard I've looked for a gift to bring you. Nothing seemed right. What's the point of bringing gold to the gold mine or water to the ocean? Everything I came up with was like taking spices to the Orient. It's no good giving my heart and my soul because you already have these. So I've brought you a mirror. Look at yourself and remember me. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Katina. There is so much food for thought in all of that. I really enjoyed it, and I think the other people here also did. I'll open the floor for any questions or comments, including anyone here.
Yeah, thank you. It was very inspiring, and yeah, I was thinking for a long time about the assignment you said about what does it mean to be an international woman. And yeah, I guess we all are international women here present, and yeah, I think it's a cause of fight that goes beyond territorial borders or borders that we human make in terms of territory, country. So yeah, I think that's what unites us overall. And yeah, it's an ongoing cause, and I think these platforms here and this speech of yours is very inspiring for us, and especially in the engineering field that normally is more male dominated. So it's good to have these opportunities to share. Yeah, thanks.
What a beautiful comment. Thank you so much for contributing. Others, online or offline?
I'm
please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you made a comment there about, the importance to connect with each other. And it would seem, I'd be interested in your perspective on the role of technology now and the future of technology for that, because it would appear to me that we're kind of grappling with how technology is dividing us at the moment. It seems to be really accelerating divisions, from my perspective anyway. And where do you see the future of technology and maybe that reconnection?
Yes, as a process, not as a thing, is one of reconnection. To me, technology is not what we think it is. That's the modern day interpretation, so to speak. But I will give you an example of what I think technology is. Here we have a depiction of artworks, in fact, icons in different cultures of the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus. One on the left from Japan, one on the bottom from the indigenous community of Mexico, an African depiction, a Japanese depiction, the one on the bottom right, a Polish depiction, one from an indigenous community on the right. That's technology to me. And even if we're non-believers, it's the form of artwork, the process of interpretation. We see ourselves, we see our colored skin, we see our language in different things. How do we capture that as a process? How do we look into each other's faiths and say, I see something common here? How do we look at belief systems and say, I see more similarity than difference, like the soldier crabs? The question is, we're forcing technology in a route as if that is going to be our saving grace to the next life. It's not. On our tombstones won't be, you know, here lies the person who sent 5,000 texts overnight, or generated 50 articles, you know, or worked on, you know, public interest. And the thing is, we can look to climate change, we can look at health systems, we can look at different things that we know will help us, education systems. But at the moment, those systems are buckling under pressure because of the distraction on things away from where we should be thinking about. And I would rather spend more time thinking about how to make life easier for the single parent who has a child with dyspraxic autism, for instance, and whose main thrust every day is to make sure they don't hit the walls and hurt their heads or fall off a balcony or go missing because they've escaped. Where are those technologies and processes in place? No, we're too busy selling technology and selling access and selling storage as if that's going to help us at home, but instead it's exacerbating what's happening at home. And I want us to get real. The real is hard. Our homes where everything happens is hard, really, really hard. So I think it's a process. We need to dispel the myth that technology is a thing I can hold. Yes, it's a router. I get it. I was a telecommunications engineer. Yes, it's a base station that helps us talk. Yes, all of these are the fundamental infrastructure. But now we're going nuts with these overlays. And then what? And then what? Trying to push the economic buck more and more. We're going to get to a point where we're going to say that's not sustainable. We need new business models. These things still need to make money and people still need to get a wage at the end of the day, a salary. But what's going to help us to live a better life? Your question is brilliant. Whoever asked it.
Thanks. Thank you. It's very great answer.
I'll just tell you, that's Professor Alicia McNamara. She's our head of school, so we're delighted that she was able to join today from her busy schedule.
Thank you.
So great answer too. Thank you. There may be some more questions online or here.
I think there might be something on chat.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Now I can see it. Peter, thank you for your encouragement throughout the years. You've been a huge advocate of women. Under your leadership at the IEEE Consumer Electronics magazine, you encouraged me to start a socio-economic impact section. Thank you, Peter. We have a beautiful comment here from Maggie. Bingo. Maggie, can I see you online? Did you want to unmute and share your thought, Maggie? We saw you. Yes.
Well, sorry, it's just that I'm busy running experiments at the same time, so it's kind of noise in the background.
No problem.
Yeah, I was just commenting there that in South Africa on the 9th of August, we actually commemorate Women's Day. because that's when the group of women marched to Parliament against this apartheid system that was demarcating areas and saying that Black people had to be in certain areas. They're not allowed to be in certain areas after a certain time. If they are, they need to show a dom pass. So it's as if we had little borders within South Africa just to move around based on the color of our skin. So that was something that was very powerful, that women, were willing to fight for the freedom. And it's also encouraging when you see women also partaking in STEM career paths, so it's like things are being opened up to us. So that's just the comment I was making.
Thank you so much for sharing. And you see the richness of sharing and learning through discourse, not from books or the internet, but from each other. I will never forget this comment.
Yeah.
And we see 20,000 women to the union buildings in Pretoria petitioned so the laws would pass. 20,000 women were mobilized.
Yes.
The power of women. And one of the things when we say accelerating action, this is a great act of action, Maggie, but also of one another. We often see that there are men in my life, my husband, my dean, my bosses at Nortel were advocates of me and I of them. But women with women, we lack the ability sometimes to empower. It's almost like the blind spot, the person closest to you, another woman perhaps. Maggie, do you have thoughts with that?
Well, for me, I know while working in South Africa, we always used to say that you'd rather have a man as a boss than a woman, because it's as if even when another woman walks into the space, there's just this intimidation that happens. So we're drawn to pulling each other down. But then when we see things like what happened with the women who marched to Pretoria, and we realize that as women, when we pull together, we can actually move mountains, So that is also, I think it's embedded in our culture as Africans, where we know that even when it comes to raising a child, it takes a village. So you find in different tribes where the oldest aunt actually has a role to play. She's an advisor to the family, where she also is considered when the men are making decisions. She's also consulted. So it's all those things that need to come into play. And in terms of what makes us international women, is also learning from each other's walks of life, each other's experiences. You had mentioned single parents. I'm a single parent. I was raised by a single parent. But then I can also learn from someone in a different continent and say, okay, what were your challenges? How can I better my parenting skills for my daughter to make sure that she becomes a human being who can impact and influence in a good way when she's an adult?
Oh, yes, some of the most beautiful things. I agree with you. I have learned from women who have shared with me openly. At swimming lessons, at places where our children are. And of course, these aren't considerations of the modern workplace, that we know we need to have greater flexibility to enable normal, natural things to happen. And we are not. So we are seeing many women taking accelerated action by perhaps trying to march to the head office, to the central office, and being told no further, only to make another stance by saying, if you are not listening, I am leaving. And I will not be under this system of tyranny. And these are the things. So if we can take action in the academic setting, at least, alleviate some concerns, why aren't the academic women encouraged to go more often to promotion and tenure hearings, to be relative to opportunity allowed to progress? And why is being pregnant with a child and having a child a career interruption in the modern language? It is not a career interruption. It is a human right of procreation and of giving to the world. Where are the remunerations? And when I went to the States, and about 6 or 7 of the young people in my school were having babies or had 6-month-old children, I said, how long is your maternity leave? 2 weeks, Katina. 2 weeks paid maternity leave in the US. But it stops. Your energy levels stop if you're a lone voice because you're worried about the repercussions.
Yes, that is so true. And I mean, even in South Africa, if you go on maternity leave, I think it's a quarter pay of your salary. You don't even get your full salary. So it's those things that make it seem as if being a woman who's trying to achieve and attain, there's always forces against you, because even in the workspace, it's as if you being a parent is actually making you less or less impactful in your, but that's not it. Being a parent, I find, is what motivates me. I mean, I was working in higher education for 10 years, and I saw this opportunity here to say, listen, come and do your PhD abroad. I took the decision to say, I'm going to quit my job because, firstly and foremost, being in another country opens up my daughter to a different mindset, you know. So it is actually making me thrive and achieve more. It's what my mom did, where at the age of 60, she was sitting with 4 honors degrees, 2 masters, one of them is an MBA, and she graduated her PhD at the age of 60, and she was the oldest graduate. So her being a single parent is what pushed her to become better, because she knew if she improved on herself, she was influencing her children in the long run. So it's not a defect. It's actually what makes us better at what we do.
What are we today? My boss used to say at Nortel, Jean-Luc Thibault, a French Canadian, Katina, we are global citizens. We will be carrying global passports before too long. And how do we, with these interactions, continue and hold on to our traditions? I don't mean let them override our modern setting, but rather than saying globalization will mean one language, one, no. How do we hold on to that which is sacred, those deep voices that called out that I shared with you, and those songs of suffering and pain and change, and seeing the world for what it was? How do we do that? But incredible, Maggie, your mum was so prolific. I imagine while steering you, continually studying and having that ethic.
Yeah, no, and she actually has influenced my sister and I so much, whereby in South Africa, we are plagued with the fact that kids who finish high school cannot be accommodated in tertiary institutions because we just don't have sufficient space. So this moved my sister and I to start a company called Uplifted Abroad, where it's actually open to anyone in the world who is searching for fully funded scholarships to study abroad, whether it's from undergrad, master's, PhD. So we have now started engaging in those, where I'm proud to say that last year we actually had our first ladies who trusted us in the process, and they graduated at Griffith College here in Ireland. You know? So it's also about, for me, what is satisfactory is that this initiative impacts generations to come. It's not just, you know, the here and now, because for me, it was strange meeting people where they're like, I'm the first generation to go to university. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense to me because my mom was, you know. So I also I appreciated the privilege that we had, because when I was born, my mom was working in higher education. So that's why we were exposed. But that's not everybody's lived experience, which is why it's important to always engage with people from different walks of life, because you can impart knowledge and you can gain knowledge.
It is the most beautiful thing in the world to meet people and to know there's only one of them and you've met them. And the blessing in academia with our colleagues, our students, people across the world that you've never met, but you still collaborate with. How amazing is that?
No, it is amazing. It is amazing. Even the gentleman who ended up being my supervisor for my master's, he was actually a classmate of mine. And we're actually both excluded from UCT when we're doing our first qualification and went to a different tertiary institution. But he was the one who motivated me to, you know, pursue research, to pursue academics. And we still work together, collaborate together from time to time, because we're so also concerned about students not taking STEM subjects in high school, you know, and how that limits their opportunities when it comes to tertiary. I feel like there is, especially in South Africa, there's a discourse between, there's not much connection between higher education and primary or high school, where now teachers are influencing students to take math literacy, and then when they get to tertiary, they expect to do engineering, but they don't meet the criteria. So it's always good to, build or take advantage of those relationships that you encounter in your life in higher education, people who are like-minded, trying to make a change and a difference in the world.
Thank you, Maggie. And Nishita, thank you for your comment on the chat.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to add, but yeah, it was a lovely interaction, and even hearing everyone talk, it was really great. Thanks a lot.
Oh, I love your comment. I won't read it out just to keep it within our group, but thank you so much. And I agree with you. Community-driven, a conscious community-driven space. And if we are lacking connection, we are lacking community. And that's what we need to rebuild. Those communities seem to be there in the diaspora naturally. As our children have grown now, as third generation Greek Australians, I tried as best I could. I couldn't do what my amazing parents did. And I say this with my friends all the time. How did they do it? Keep a household, keep a veggie patch, keep a job, have us in Greek school, pick us up from this sport. We just don't know. And so as we saw in the Yongila Mazari example, the young adults are returning to the temples to light the candle and the incense. Perhaps not for the same reasons the former generation did, but it's a cultural experience because they see something that they connect with deep inside their hearts. It's an ancestral memory, the indigenous people would say. But if severing that connection means we don't know what these special places of worship mean in any context, we're losing touch with where we came from. And I'm not so certain about where we think we're going. We can't let the technology sway us in a particular direction. We need to use this as a tool to develop our humanity and our inner wealth, which is far greater in importance than being able to do something technologically, I'd say, in the longer term. Tech and wealth don't make people happy, just the opposite. Most of us yearn for a basic conversation at those beautiful Irish cafes that I frequented, where everyone walked in and was able to have a cup of coffee, and you saw signs, please don't take out technology. I saw those signs firsthand. They didn't want people staying there for 7 hours typing away and losing touch with the world with one cappuccino. They wanted people to talk, so I walked into one particular cafe and there were people knitting while they were talking, and I thought, this is my kind of place. Not because I knit, but the low tech conversation, looking into each other's eyes, connection, caring.
Great. That's been absolutely gorgeous. Great. And a great celebration of International Women's Day and our international, focusing on the international side. I mean, it's great to hear that, no matter where we are, it's the same issues. You're ready to go to bed. I know, Katina, you're in a completely different time scale, but I think we can agree that you have had much the same issues, and going back generations, you've shown us that it's been the same issues as well. And so it's been absolutely great to share that and leave us with lots of food for thought about how we can use our skills in developing technology for the better of humans and humanity. And the other thing I'll say, it's great to see so many males and females online and who joined here as well. Because it's very much, and I think maybe Bingo or Maggie said it, if you can't see it, if you don't see it, you don't realize that you can be it. And I mean, congrats to her mum and to herself for starting that business as well. So, there's just so much food for thought. So thank you very much. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything before we close off, but Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining. You're getting lots of nice reactions there.
Thank you, Josephine.
Yeah, great. Happy International Women's Day and St. Patrick's weekend from Ireland. Okay.
Happy International Day, women and men and others, and have a brilliant long weekend. Much love from Australia.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Bye now.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.